It's a crossover Thursday here on the LockedOn Giants podcast as LockedOn Saints host Ross Jackson joins me to break down the New Orleans Saints. That's coming up next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and thank you so much, Giant fans, for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen of the day. Really appreciate it. It is a crossover Thursday show today. I'm going to have Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast, on the program. He's going to be joining me a little bit later. But first, in this segment, I've got to be honest with you. All right. I had about three things I wanted to talk about in this segment. And, each segment, we try to keep it to about, anywhere between 6 and 10 minutes. Sometimes we go a little over. I realize that, but I just couldn't make up my mind what to talk about. And in looking at the different topics, which included Golden Tate's comments about the Giants maybe overdoing it on conditioning, the Giants play of late, which has not been very good. And the other thing I was going to talk about, I think, was injuries. I want to go back and talk about the Giants losing this season. Now, I know it's not a very popular topic, but here's what I was kind of curious about. I went back and I looked at this and I said to myself, okay, is it the talent? Is it the coaching? Is it the execution? What exactly is at the root, the common denominator, if you will, of the Giants losing thus far this season? And my conclusion, quite frankly, is it's a combination of execution and coaching. And I went and I made a list of all the mistakes, the biggest mistakes in each of the game. And I'm not going to go through the entire list, because it's quite a long list. And actually what I might do is I might write it out for Giants Country if you want to see the list, if you have the stomach for it. But in looking at this list, you have coaching decisions. We could go back to Atlanta and the conservative play calling by Joe Judge and Jason Garrett. We can look at Joe Judge when he wasted the timeout in the what was it, the Washington game, I think? No, I'm sorry, it was the Denver game, when he was trying to get the officials' attention on a scoring play and he threw a challenge flag. That was a wasted timeout. We can look at, again, the play calling in Washington. I mean, there's so many things we could take a look at when trying to figure out why the Giants are 0-3. Now, people say, well, what about the talent? I think the Giants have enough talent. I really do. Right now, however, this coaching staff and these players are not playing up to that talent. All right. This team is just not good enough as a whole to overcome the litany of mistakes that they have been making week after week after week. The moment that the Giants, and I include the coaching in this, the moment that they cut down dramatically on their mistakes is going to be when they turn things around. All right. Nobody plays a perfect game. There's always going to be a mistake here and there. But when you have multiple mistakes coming at critical times, penalties, drop passes, missed passes, missed blocks, you name it. If your team, you could have all the talent in the world, and every time you put yourself in a hole, it becomes harder to dig yourself out of it. So for the Giants moving forward, as they prepare to go down to what I call the House of Horrors down in New Orleans, and I call it a House of Horrors, that Superdome, because the Giants, the last three times that they've been down there, they've been absolutely destroyed. Bad things happen on that field for the Giants. As they prepare to go down there, it comes down to cleaning up the mistakes and the coaches, taking a few chances. Head coach Joe Judge on Wednesday spoke about how he's not afraid to take chances, how he's not afraid to gamble. Well, gee whiz, I don't know about you, but the last couple of weeks, it sure has looked like some of these decisions, which are being made supposedly in the best interest given the circumstances, sure do look like they've been cases where the coaching staff has been afraid to gamble. And you're 0-3 right now. All right. Before your season slips away, do something, be more aggressive. If you don't get it, then, especially early in the game, hopefully you catch up later in the game. And I don't know, guys. I mean, this has been a frustrating first 3 games for the Giants. They should be a lot better than what they have shown on the field. It's just the sloppiness, the fundamentals. And let me talk about the fundamentals for a moment here, because I was having this discussion with somebody and I made the comment that the fundamentals have been off. And I got some pushback on it. I was told, well, you think of the fundamentals, you think of the basic skills for football, catching the ball, making tackles and so on and so forth. But that's my point. Okay. You can't have drop passes. If a ball hits you in the hands and you drop it, isn't that a fundamental? Isn't making a tackle, a proper tackle, a fundamental? Isn't running a correct route a fundamental? Or am I missing something? I mean, maybe it's me. Maybe I have the wrong definition of fundamental. But this team has just, I go back to the summer, and I think I've spoken about this before. And I know, matter of fact, I know I've spoken about this before. I know Ed Valentine and I spoke about it on Wednesday's show. This team just wasn't ready to start the season. And, that's a sad thing to say, but it sure does look like it's the truth. So where do they go from here? I don't know. I mean, you can't go back and take 10 days, 20 days, 6 weeks to go back and correct all this stuff. You have to kind of make the corrections on the fly as you get ready for each new game. And I just hope that this coaching staff has a plan to fix this. And not just the players, not just the fundamental issues, but some of what they're doing. And just look in the mirror and ask yourselves, are you really putting your players in the best possible position to make plays? I mean, when you hear Kenny Golladay asked about why he's not making big plays and he goes, I don't have an answer for that. He's got an answer for that. He just is afraid to say it, or, reluctant to say it, I should say. Right? What does it boil down to? I mean, we can say it. Is he being put in position to make big plays? Probably not. So that said, folks, the Giants, I always like to think positively about this team, because to be negative just brings me down. But I've got to see it. I've got to have a reason to be optimistic, as I'm sure you guys and gals do. And right now, can we honestly say that maybe, with a couple of exceptions, the play of Azeez Ojulari, the fact that Saquon Barkley looks healthy again, although he's still not running like Saquon Barkley is capable of running. Daniel Jones hasn't been horrible this year. So there's been a few bright spots. But for the most part, I need a reason to believe. And I'm sure you guys and gals need it as well. So will the Giants bring it to us on Sunday against the Saints? Fingers crossed. But until I get that reason to believe, to be optimistic, I just don't know what to tell you guys. I know a lot of you have written to me in the comments and asked me, sent letters to the editor and said, oh, this is what the Giants should do. I don't have any answers for you. I wish I did. But let's hope this team turns it around and their extended preseason is over and they start playing like they are ready for the 2021 season. All right, Giant fans, we've got much more coming up here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. Ross Jackson of LockedOn Saints joins the program, and you will probably notice a big change in my demeanor when this interview takes place. Interview was taped on Tuesday, and it was a great discussion. And you will also be able to hear what I had to say on Ross's show. I'll put that in the show notes for you. So that is coming up. My segment with Ross and his segment with me, that's coming up right after this. All right, Giant fans, coming up next, we have Ross Jackson of the LockedOn Saints podcast. He's going to break down the New Orleans Saints for us in detail. Some great stuff from Ross Jackson. But first, I want to tell you about Get Upside. Now, I drive a lot as part of my job covering the New York Giants. I'm on site up in East Rutherford, and I'm easily driving about an hour every day. Now, thanks to Get Upside, I am saving every time I fill up my car at the pump. So Get Upside is a free app. Sign up for an account. You get 25 cents back per gallon of gas every time you fill up. And trust me when I say that savings adds up. And the more driving you do, obviously, you're talking $200 to $300 a month. And the great thing about Get Upside is that you can cash out anytime you want. You can get an Amazon gift card. You can have it sent to your bank account. You can do it via PayPal, however you want to do it, and however often you want to do it. And right now, when you use our special promo code Touchdown, you can save 50 cents per gallon on your first fill up. Again, that app is Get Upside. The promo code is Touchdown. Download that app today. It's available in the Google Play Store and in iTunes. Sign up for an account. Use our special promo code Touchdown. Get 50% off on your first fill up. That's Get Upside. All right. Welcome back, Giant fans, to the crossover segment of the LockedOn Giants podcast. And I've been talking about this all week because I've been so excited to have this gentleman on with me. He is the one and only Ross Jackson. He is the host of the LockedOn Saints podcast. And I tell you, I had this date circled on my calendar, folks, because I absolutely love Ross. He is a fountain of knowledge. And look at that smile.
You always got me cheesing, Patricia. You always got me smiling.
I tell you, man, you always put a smile on my face. I mean, I just love chatting with you on and offline. And I'm excited to talk Giant Saints with you, my friend. How have you been?
Yes, I'm doing great. I've been looking forward to this as well. This is going to be a very fun game to break down, and even more fun that I get to do it with you. Very excited to be here with you.
Well, I appreciate you, and I can't wait to hear the knowledge you're going to drop on us. And my friend, let's start with the Saints offense. Jameis Winston, you had predicted back in the summer that you thought that might be the direction that they are going with at quarterback. Now that you've seen a few games, how much has that offense been tweaked with Jameis as the quarterback?
It's interesting because I think what people expected, all right, get ready for my really bad joke here. I think what people expected was kind of this gunslinger gumbo, and instead what they're getting is an efficiency étouffée. And what I mean by that is that instead of there being sort of this big explosive offense that's coming out and putting the ball down the field every 3 plays and taking all these shots downfield, you're seeing Jameis Winston in the 2 wins throw 20 and 21 passes. Meanwhile, you're watching this offense run for 35 plus in both of those wins as well. And that's the winning formula for this team. Not changing the offense and all of a sudden attacking deep, but remaining conservative, remaining efficient, and picking up yards on the ground and winning at the line of scrimmage. So it's interesting that not too much has changed, but do expect this Saints offense to continue to evolve as the offense gets a little healthier, as rhythm sets in, things like that. Regardless of how long Jameis Winston's been in the NFL, this is his first year as a starter in Sean Payton's system, which is not an easy system. We've seen what he's been able to do with quarterbacks from the New York Giants to the New Orleans Saints. It's going to take time, and it's not just going to work immediately, but it is one of those interesting sort of existences so far, or estimations so far of what that offense was going to look like versus what it looks like now. And I think it goes counter to what a lot of people expected.
Now, certainly helping him out is a gentleman by the name of Alvin Kamara, a guy who I think Giant fans really wish that Jason Garrett, our offensive coordinator, would copy what the Saints do with Alvin Kamara as both a runner and as a receiving threat out of the backfield. Now, from the outside looking in, it looks like Kamara has been that offense. He is the main guy, the main focal point. What is it about what they have him doing, especially behind that offensive line? And where is he most dangerous right now?
I mean, that's the beautiful thing about Alvin Kamara is that it's almost easier to tell you where he's not dangerous, which might be like defense. Because I mean, we've seen the guy run back kicks for kickoff returns for touchdowns before too. And so you could even use him as a special teamer. But of course, he's the feature for this New Orleans Saints offense right now. That's Alvin Kamara is the vessel through which this offense runs. 24 carries last week, and he's had over 20 touches in each of these games. You didn't see him do that much throughout his career. I believe there was only 2 games over this first 4 seasons where he had that many touches in a single game. And now you've seen it at least twice already this season. And I think you'll see it again this weekend. The thing that the Saints did in their loss to Carolina that I don't think you'll see them do again is get away from the run game. They ran with Alvin Kamara only twice in that first half. They made sure that they ran 3 times in the first drive with Alvin Kamara on Sunday in their win against the Patriots. And I think you'll see that same type of approach. And if they go to the air early on in this game, I would definitely expect it to be sort of these dump off screen passes, tunnel screens, things like that to Alvin Kamara to get him involved and get Jameis Winston in rhythm early. Jameis Winston in this Saints offense will continue to take shots down the field, but it's all predicated and set up by what they do with Alvin Kamara.
Right. And Alvin Kamara has seen about on 25% of his rushes, I think, this season, 8-man boxes, and he still figures out how to beat them. The Saints use a lot of heavy personnel, the 12 personnel. I think it's something like 33%. And you mentioned Kamara's ability as a receiver out of the backfield. I think it's 10 catches for 13 targets, on 13 targets, 62 yards and 2 touchdowns. So definitely a dual threat and not a good matchup for a Giants defense that just lost Blake Martinez, their inside linebacker, to a season-ending ACL. All right, let's talk a little bit about the receivers and the tight ends. Now, obviously, Michael Thomas is on IR. Tre'Quan Smith, I think, is dealing with an injury. I'm not sure if he's on IR or not, but I think there's an injury concern there. That's a lot of firepower loss. How have the Saints been making up for that in the passing game? I mean, it's not all been Kamara, obviously. How have they been making up for it?
Yeah, that's their wide receiver 1 and 2 out, right? And Michael Thomas isn't going to be eligible to come back until after week 6. So the Seattle Seahawks game at the earliest. Tre'Quan Smith could potentially come back for this game. He made the active roster and then they immediately put him on injured reserve. So his 3-game limit is now passed, but that's just the logistics of when he can return. There's also the injury recovery portion of it that may or may not time out. So there's a chance we see Tre'Quan Smith this week. We'll have a better idea of it as we get the later injury reports and everything and game designations. But the way that the Saints so far have been trying to figure out this passing game has been mostly to utilize a lot of clear out and combo routes over on one side of the field. Now, they're still running full field reads all throughout for Jameis Winston because he can do that. He progresses well enough for this offense to be able to do it. But because the offensive line has been giving up so much pressure, 64% of Jameis Winston's dropbacks against the Carolina Panthers just 2 weeks ago were under pressure, one of the highest in the NFL since ESPN started tracking pressure percentage. I think it was 3rd highest in the history of that metric, which is huge. And so you see the Saints now looking at trying to take advantage of quick passing games, but then also overloading one side of the field, sail concepts, variations on some Yankee concepts where you have a clear out route on one side and a crossing route over the other so that you're moving defenders out of the way, particularly zone heavy teams and man heavy teams. Actually, it works very well there too. So I think that you'll continue to see them run their favorite route combinations and try to find things up against the line of scrimmage as opposed to over the middle of the field, which they've had a little bit of trouble connecting with receivers over that time. But I think you'll see a lot of short passes, a lot of short and intermediate attack in that area, and a lot of outbreaking routes. That's where the Saints seem to have been most comfortable so far this season. We'll see if that shifts in front of a home crowd.
Now, of course, it all starts up front with the offensive line. And the Saints, when healthy, probably have one of the top, if not the top, offensive lines in the NFL. Right now, they're not healthy. They've just lost left tackle Teron Armstead, I believe, to an elbow injury.
Correct.
And I believe he was replaced by James Hurst. Their interior is Andres Pete, Cesar Ruiz, Calvin Throckmorton. Solid, center Eric McCoy, is he going to be back or not? We don't know. But where's your concern with the offensive line as it stands right now? Or do you have a concern with it?
I certainly do. And I think for me, even with losing Teron Armstead, my concern is still very much in the interior. If you're giving up interior A-gap pressure, your quarterback has no time. And when it comes down to Jameis Winston, you want him to have time because he has the big arms. So when you do have those opportunities to allow routes to develop downfield, you need time for that. So that's a big change for this offense. That is, I guess, one of the big changes for this offense that still wants to get the ball out quickly where they can, but they're not looking to do it every single pass like they did with Drew Brees, where they were trying to immediately get passes out 2.5 seconds in. Now you're looking at holding blocks a little bit longer so that you might be able to take some of those shots downfield, but that's always going to be predicated on what they can do in the short and intermediate areas. But it's the interior offensive line for me that's the biggest concern. It's the most immediate pressure for the quarterback, and so far that's where a lot of their pressures have come from, as opposed to the edge rushers over on the outside.
And of course, that interior is going to see Leonard Williams, who was the Giants sack leader last year. They're going to see Dexter Lawrence, who is a very underrated player. He's been kind of quiet to start the season, but a guy who they are looking to turn some of these pressures that he's had into sacks. I mean, he's a big body guy who can definitely move the pile. Really good matchup, I think, for the interior of that Saints offensive line. I mean, what are your thoughts on that matchup?
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the key matchups to watch throughout this game, is to make sure that those guys, I mean, look, Dexter Lawrence maybe started off a little bit quiet. He's certainly underrated, but hey, look, when you know the name of an interior defensive lineman, there's a reason for it. And he has definitely earned that. Same thing with Leonard Williams, who, when I saw him return to the New York Giants over the course of the offseason, that was one of the first things that I thought about, because the Saints had some trouble on the interior last year as well. And so one of the big things was, that's going to be big. It's going to be a big matchup for New Orleans. So that's definitely going to be a spot that I'm watching, and kind of a key for this New Orleans Saints offense, who are going to try to keep Jameis Winston clean. You see his passer rating drop from over 119 passer rating down to 57.1. You see the completion percentage, which is fantastic when he's kept clean, over 70%, drop all the way down to 57% when he's under pressure, 10 of 24 on those snaps. Yeah, he's got some touchdowns there, but it haven't always been on the wisest and easiest decisions, right? And so, any of those balls goes the wrong way, that could end up being of detriment for this New Orleans Saints team.
All right, so here's the big key. You mentioned, the interior versus the Giants defensive line. The Giants like to try to send 4 to disrupt the quarterback. Be honest with me now. How confident are you that the Saints are going to be able to hold them off, or do you think the Giants have an advantage here?
I feel better if they're only sending 4, I'll be honest, because a part of what has given the Saints some trouble so far this offseason, early on this season, has been not having Eric McCoy, who helps to call out the blitz protections. And so the exotic blitz packages that they faced against Phil Snow over in Carolina, and of course Bill Belichick in New England, that has been what has given them the most trouble. Stunts, twists, things like that, yes, but pressure from the second level, pressure from the third level when they're sending secondary pressure from safeties or anybody else up against the line of scrimmage, that is what has given the Saints some trouble. So if the Giants are going to send 4, I actually feel a little bit more confident for the Saints offensive line there, but I'd still keep an eye out on the interior regardless of how many players they're sending.
All right, Giant fans, before we get back to our discussion with Ross Jackson of the LockedOn Saints podcast, got to tell you about our friends over at Rock Auto. Now, I mentioned before about how I do a lot of driving. Well, thanks to Rock Auto and their extensive online catalog and their shipping right to my door, my husband, who's a do-it-himself type of guy with the cars, can get all the parts he needs to service my car, and it's really convenient. Rock Auto has every part for every make, every manufacturer, every model that you could possibly be looking for. Check them out today and make sure you tell them that we sent you. Put down Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know that we sent you. and start saving today on your parts for your car or your truck or your motorcycle. Check them out, rockauto.com. Amazing selections, reliably low prices, rockauto.com. All right, Giant fans, still more to come here on the Locked On Giants podcast, where the New York Giants are going to be facing the New Orleans Saints this Sunday. Currently, the Giants are an 8-point underdog against the Saints. And speaking of underdogs and odds, you can get all the latest news, odds, info, and sign-up bonuses from our friends over at betonline.ag. Head on over there, and when you open an account using our special promo code NFL 100, you will get a 100% welcome bonus on your account. Again, that's code NFL 100 for a 100% welcome bonus over on betonline.ag. Check them out. Terms and conditions apply. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Ross, let's flip it over now to the defense. Let's talk about the Saints defense. So just to recap, Week 1, Dennis Allen's group shut down the Green Bay Packers. They gave Bill Belichick's offense fits. I think they had 3 interceptions, I want to say, of Mac Jones.
Yep.
And that defense, I think we can probably safely say that they're a big reason why the Saints are 2-1, 4th in the NFL in scoring, and they're only giving up 14 points a game. Not good for the Giants, who are struggling to score. The Giants are averaging about 18 points per game. Saints defense, 3rd against the run, I believe, 15th in passing yards, 6 sacks. Where's there a weakness on this defense?
It's incredible. I mean, I have to be honest, like the defense has been so fun to watch for the New Orleans Saints because there were so many concerns around it, right? I mean, they lost 13.5 sacks when Trey Hendrickson went to Cincinnati. They lost Quan Alexander, who they promptly replaced by Pete Werner, and then Quan Alexander, who were they able to get back on a $10 million cheaper price tag. So that was great for them. Quan Alexander won't be available for this game, however, because he's still on injured reserve, but Pete Werner should be available. Had a really nice debut against the New England Patriots. And then the secondary is really the story here when it comes to the Saints defense over the course of the offseason. You lose Janoris Jenkins. There's a big question mark about who is going to be the cornerback opposite Marshawn Lattimore. For a little while, it was Ken Crawley. For a little while after that, it was maybe Patrick Robinson. Ken Crawley goes to injured reserve. Patrick Robinson straight up retires. And then you're kind of sitting there with the 3rd-round rookie that the Saints just drafted, Paulson Adebo, who I was super high on coming out of Stanford. However, he didn't play in 2020. He opted out of that season. And his 2019 season, he got cut short with an ankle injury. And so I wasn't sure if marching him out across from Aaron Rodgers was really the best way to welcome him to the NFL. It turns out he actually has performed extremely well. His composure is there. His confidence is absolutely there. And it's the mental side of the game that I was most concerned about because he has a ton of natural ability as a former receiver and huge hands. So you like to see, if he gets his hands on the ball, there's a good chance he's coming down with it. And you like that for this New Orleans Saints defense that led the league last year in turnovers and was tied for the league lead in interceptions. Now, can the Saints continue to replicate that will be the big piece. But now all of a sudden that secondary is their strength. Marshawn Lattimore is still there. He's got a cast on his right hand, but he had a great game last week. He had that thumb surgery after the week 2 game or ahead of the week 2 game, excuse me. The safeties are fantastic in Marcus Williams and Malcolm Jenkins. And then you have Bradley Roby, who the Saints traded for, and he can't even find his way to the field over Paulson Adebo. And oh yeah, there's this one guy, CJ Gardner-Johnson, that can play in coverage, that can play in the run game, and that knocked over in a bull rush the starting right tackle for the New England Patriots last week. The guy can just do it all. So all of a sudden, this Saints defense looks like it doesn't have a weakness. But if there was one place that I would watch, it would just be the coverage over the middle and the intermediate area, tight ends in particular. The players that you want to see a young quarterback get involved. There's a spot where the Saints could potentially be vulnerable there, depending upon rookie Pete Werner being able to follow up a nice debut, but he's not Quan Alexander for you, and that could be a weakness for the Saints.
Okay, Evan Ingram, if you're listening, this is the week to have a big game against the Saints.
It's the one. This is the one.
This is it. This is it. I mean, and Kyle Rudolph, too, who hasn't been involved a whole lot. All right, Ross, I got to ask you, sticking with the front 7 here, the Saints defensive tackle, David Onimata, I hope I said that right, is on a 6-game suspension. And he's been, I think, their top guy there. How have they been replacing him, and the guys that have replaced him? How have they kind of done in Onimata's absence?
Yeah, I thought that Big Do, as we like to call him, we also have another nickname for him.
Now you tell me an easy nickname, man.
Yeah. I was gonna let you work for it. No, but we have another nickname for him too, the Manitoba Mauler, because he came in from Manitoba up in Canada, up in the Great North there. But yeah, I mean, look, I thought that losing him was going to be huge for the New Orleans Saints. And so far, particularly in the run game, and so far, as you mentioned earlier, they're one of the top teams in stopping the run. They only allowed 49 yards to the New England Patriots last week. That was, they ran for 55 yards in one drive at one point to kind of top what New England was able to get on the ground for them throughout an entire game. And so I think they've done a good job there. The key to replacing David Onimata has been Tano Passanio, who came in as a kind of this underrated, undervalued free agent addition from the Kansas City Chiefs. He can play on the edge. He can play nose tackle. He can play 3-tech. And so he just gives you the versatility that you're looking for to help outlast an offensive line who are usually going to play the same 5 guys throughout the entire game, barring injury, of course, but this defensive line goes 8-9 deep in terms of rotation and substitution. And that has been a big part of how the Saints have combated the loss of Onimata, is by making sure that they have these versatile, big, basketball built players, 6'7", 6'6" when it comes to Carl Granderson, 6'7" again when it comes to Peyton Turner. I mean, they love these big, tall guys to go out there because you can move them around and you can do anything you want with them along any of the technique spots on the defensive line. So that's been a big key for them.
Now, a matchup that I'm a little worried about, Cam Jordan versus Nate Solder. And I think Cam Jordan plays mostly on the left side, if I'm not mistaken, which means he would draw Nate Solder, the right tackle. How do you slow this guy down? I mean, you're talking a guy who combines power and quickness and just, he's a tough customer to deal with. So, I mean, how do you stop this guy?
Yeah, it's tough. And look, Cam Jordan right now doesn't have any sacks in the season, but he's got 15 pressures over the course of 3 games, including 9 total pressures, 6 hurries, 3 hits when it came to Mac Jones and the New England Patriots last week. Watch out for Cam Jordan over on that defensive left side, because he's going to want to come after the young quarterback in Daniel Jones. It's one of his favorite things to do. He loves coming after the young guys, and Matt Ryan. Those are the favorite. Those are his favorite prey. But look, competing with Cam Jordan is about veteran savvy, and that's where Cam Jordan always seems to have the edge, even if he's a step slower at this point in his career than he was back in the 3 straight double-digit sack seasons. He's always has the pass rushing moves, the ability to be able to string moves together. He has a pass rushing plan that he's very adept at, and he'll develop it, change it, evolve it over the course of the game, depending upon what he's getting from the player in front of him. So it's going to be a tough matchup to figure out how to do it. And if you take the time to double team him, then you're opening up the doors for guys like Tano Passanio, who leads the team in sacks so far, Peyton Turner, who's been very impressive so far in his rookie action, and that defensive interior that somehow, even without David Onimata, has continued to be a nuisance for opposing quarterbacks right up the middle.
I don't know. Maybe if you're the Giants, you swap Nate Solder with Andrew Thomas, which I know they will do. But Andrew Thomas has played really well for the Giants after a rough, preseason finale. He's been solid. And I believe he gets Carl Granderson, I think, this week.
It'll be a bit of a combination between Carl Granderson and Tano Passanio, more than likely. And he'll draw some Peyton Turner too, but the two up at the top there will be Carl Granderson and Tano Passanio for sure.
Definitely. All right. And now I got to talk about the linebackers, because you have a linebacker that I really wanted the Giants to draft when he was in the draft, Zach Bond, who plays along with Demario Davis, 32 years old, still at a high level. I mean, 11 stops in 3 games. Wow. And then Zach Bond, as I mentioned, he was a situational pass rusher. Really a good 1-2 punch. And then I think you also have a guy by the name of Caden Ellis who gets rotated in there. Solid group.
Yeah. Yeah. This linebacking core was one that drew a lot of questions, particularly who is it that was going to start next to Demario Davis? Zach Bond got the start against Carolina. Pete Werner, the young rookie out of Ohio State, got the start last week against the Patriots. We'll see which of the two gets to start this week. But no matter what, they're all hitting the field, and so is Caden Ellis. And they like to use Caden Ellis as a blitzer. Caden Ellis came out of Idaho, played just about everything. The guy was he played 3-tech in a game. He has been a safety. He's been a corner. He's been a linebacker. He was even a triple option quarterback in high school. I mean, he just has athleticism dripping all over the place. And, he had a big play last week. He was the one that had the pressure right up the middle on Mac Jones that led to the first interception by PJ Williams, if I'm remembering correctly. And then he also had a nice hustle play on the fumble at the end of that as well. And you saw him make a couple of other plays as well. So this Saints linebacking core, much like that secondary, was one that had a lot of question marks around it. Less concerned than the cornerback spot because it's a premier position, cornerback is. And of course, you have Demario Davis in the middle of it all as well, who's still playing, as you mentioned, incredibly well for this Saints defense, and has been really the reason for the revitalization of defense in the city of New Orleans, as they've all of a sudden turned into a defensive team under his watch.
All right. So what's the X factor for the Saints defense?
I think for the Saints defense, and I talked about him last week too when he showed up. I think it's going to be C.J. Gardner-Johnson. This guy, you can ask him to do anything, and not only will he do it, but he'll excel at it. He's a good pass rusher for you. The Saints, on average, and of course, this is a small sample size, but on average, have allowed or have given up rather only 14 points in games where they have used C.J. Gardner-Johnson as a blitzer more than 5 times. Now, of course, these two things aren't like one another, but the style of defense that they're able to play around him to the point where they're able to free him up to make those types of decisions absolutely factors in to the way that they're able to play and finish games. So I think that C.J. Gardner-Johnson, his ability to cover, blitz, and be a run stopper from the second level up against the line of scrimmage and even off the line of scrimmage as well when they put him back out at safety every now and then, is just one of those chess pieces that you'll have to keep an eye out on. And they're going to want to confuse the young quarterback in Daniel Jones. I mean, he's not new to the NFL, but he's still young, and they're going to want to give him something exotic to see, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson, big number 22, will be a part of that.
For sure. Now, before I ask you for a prediction, I want to get your take on what matchup most concerns you about this game from the Giants' perspective.
I think that for me, it's that interior offensive line for the Saints going up against that very strong interior of the New York Giants. For me, that is the spot where they can turn the tide of this game by getting pressure consistently on Jameis Winston, making him operate out of phase, and therefore forcing the Saints to operate behind schedule. They've not been great there. And if they can make plays in the first and second downs, the early downs, and get the Saints to the point where they're operating in third and long situations, that has not been very friendly to New Orleans so far this season. So that would be a big part for me, would be that defensive interior against the interior offensive line, for the New Orleans Saints in this one.
All right. Now, according to our friends at Bet Online, the Saints are an 8-point favorite in this game. What's your prediction? Do you go with that, or do you feel that it's going to be a little closer than maybe that 8-point spread?
I always have a lot of trouble taking an 8-point spread. A touchdown victory in the NFL is a big victory, right? So for me, I think probably the Giants cover that, but I do take the Saints to win here. And a big part of it is being home for the first time in front of a full audience since January of 2020. It's been a long time since the Who Dat Nation, this New Orleans Saints fan base, has gotten a cheer for their team, and they're going to be loud, right? They're going to be very, very loud. I'm going to set up one of the little cups of water and see if I get ripples from it, from that New Orleans Saints,
you will.
New Orleans Saints fan base, because they're going to be ready to go for this game. And I think that could be a difference maker, right? We're talking about making the opposing quarterbacks uncomfortable making the opposing quarterback uncomfortable in Daniel Jones. That New Orleans Saints fan base has the ability to do that, especially if there's already some changes or any type of mixing up going on in play calling for New York as things adjust. And, these things happen early on in seasons. That can get a little tricky for the opposing offense, in particular in New Orleans.
All right, Ross, my friend, great stuff. Giant fans, you're going to want to check Ross out over on the LockedOn Saints podcast. I was on his show, gave him some insight on the Giants. So make sure you check that out. And make sure you keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. And don't forget to check out our other great podcast offerings. We have Locked On Bets, we have Locked On NFL, Locked On Today. So many great podcasts. You can't go wrong with any of them. And they're so informative, so well done by our tremendously talented team. Keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Tomorrow, we've got a special guest. I promise you guys an interview. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but it's an interview I think you're going to enjoy. I know I enjoyed having this interview, and I'm excited to share it with you on tomorrow's show. So until then, Giant fans, have a great day. Well, we will talk to you again tomorrow.